Welcome back, everyone. You are watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage YouTube channel. And as I have been assessing a machine that I won a bid on at an auction site for the Singer 301, sometimes you win the bid, it's like, yay, I won the bid. And then you start thinking, oh, was it a good thing that I won the bid? So I've been sharing a few videos with you, showing you as I'm going through, trying to inspect. This is not the same as when you go and look at a machine. If there's a machine local to you or somewhere near you and you go to physically look at it and the seller has it, you don't always have a ton of time to inspect the machine. But with an auction, you only really have photographs and any questions you might try to ask someone who may not know how to answer them. So you're kind of taking a chance, and I did on this one. And so I wanted to remind all of you that there have been a few times in the history of my channel, in fact, the history of my hobby doing these restorations. They are very rare moments, and I mean really rare, when I get a machine, I open up boxes or bags, or sometimes if it came in a table, I might have a drawer, and I'll find something in there that I wasn't expecting. And sometimes that what I find can sometimes be as much worth as much as the machine or more. This happened a number of years ago when I found a treadle table with a Singer straight stitch, I think it was a class 15 treadle machine. And I got that machine, and I happened to notice that in the drawer something looked awfully interesting, and it was sort of a cream colored plastic box, and in that box was a Swiss made Singer zigzagger, and that Singer zigzagger and its little zigzagging cams, there are certain things in the vintage sewing machine world that are highly collectible, and that was one of them. In fact, I think I ended up selling that zigzagger alone. It sold for more than the machine in the table did, but that's extremely rare. Normally that doesn't happen. And while I don't think that this find that I'm going to share with you today is quite that exciting, it is unusual. So I showed you in an earlier video, I showed you the box, and it says for class 301 machines, these are the accessories that would have standard accessories, and then of course mixed in here were some new things that don't even fit this machine. They're low shank, a couple of bobbins, and that's basically, I expect to, hopefully that's nice to have. It's an original Singer box, a little shop worn like most of them are, but again, that's very nice. Sometimes you don't get that. And then there was this manual on the Singer automatic zigzagger. They loved the word automatic back then. That was supposed to, I think that was to denote time saving. So anyway, this was a device that the Singer company had created. Singer would eventually come out with zigzag capable machines, and those of you who have Slant-O-Matic 400 series, or the 500 Rocketeer series as it's called, or later Slant-O-Matics, you know that Singer had zigzag and decorative stitch capability. But when the 301 came out, those other series were not out yet. And Singer had introduced earlier machines, I think it's the 319, that had zigzag capability. Some people like them, some of you love them, and they're beautifully made. How well they make zigzag, I don't know. I think I have restored one of them before, and I have to go back and see if even I made a video on it. I wish I had. So Singer and other companies had these too, but Singer really marketed and heavily promoted the Singer automatic zigzagger. And you can see here it has above here on the cover, it has zigzag pattern, but it has not only that, but you can do decorative. This is like a scallop, and I don't know if this was a dart. They had different names for them. This was I don't know what this was, the Walls of Jericho or something. So I have seen these before. You don't see them all the time, but Singer zigzaggers were often sold to people who said, well, my neighbor has one of those new machines with zigzag, and do you have anything that's like, well, we have a zigzag model, but you don't need that. All you need is a straight stitch machine like you're used to, you're comfortable with. Oh, and we have a zigzagger attachment. And of course, if they had shown this to the customer, this thing is heavy, guys. This thing is made of steel, right? In fact, it actually requires some maintenance. You need to actually oil it. It's made of metal, not plastic. So it was no one would ever accuse Singer of making a poorly constructed device. And there were different sets of cams that you could get. You may have seen cams. I'm going to pull these out for you all. You may have seen cams. The cams actually sit in this little cardboard cutout space, not unlike the way your eggs sit in a carton. And there's something in here. I don't know what that is. It's a piece of. I don't think this is related to the sewing. Somebody had this in here for some purpose. I don't know what. Anyway, so you had cams, and the cams are just like sewing cams for the sewing machine itself. You could also have, these are pattern cams. When you hear the word cam, the cam goes in there, and the cam is shaped in a certain way so that when it turns, it creates a pattern. And if you have ever used cams in a sewing machine to do decorative stitches, you know this. Well, they also had it for the zigzag attachment because, of course, the 301 was a straight stitch machine only. You could not do decorative stitches with it, but you could get cams, and that was the selling point. Now, there were cams that came, there were extra cams. And so when you bought the zigzagger, you had what were called default or standard cams, and they were red. And here you see, just like you saw on the cover, this is, I'll turn these up so you guys can see them a little more easily. The cams all have patterns. Well, it doesn't want to stay there. Okay, and the cams are, this is, of course, I think they called it scallop, or maybe they had a different name for it. And this is, I think they call this one a dart. It looks like a series of arrows. And what you'll notice is that the cams themselves are made of aluminum. And here you see there's the third pattern. So if you paid for this zigzag attachment, you would get, of course, and you see this actually is preloaded into, they just installed it. I don't know if when it was new, if it was installed or if the owner did this, but you see the zigzag pattern. Now, there's something here that's unusual. The standard cams that you would find were these cams in the red. There may have been other red cams. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at my own videos, quite honestly. But they also had, was a set of cams that came in a bright yellow. There was a sort of a royal blue series, and then there was a series in white. And they were just basically more patterns that you could get. And I once had several sets of those, and I came across someone who was interested in them, and they had lots of machines, but they started collecting accessories. And you don't see the yellow or the blue or the white cams as often because they were extra. And remember, the zigzagger was already an upcharge. So if someone said, okay, I'll spring for this zigzagger as an extra tool, does it not? Yeah, it comes with cams. Okay, well, maybe I'll think about your extras later. So they didn't sell as many of those. They're not as common, and they bring more money than the red cams. They're not better. They're just the red cams are more easily found. But I'm looking at this. In fact, I was looking at this when I was talking about the accessories in a recent video on this machine, and then it hit me. Virtually every cam set that I have ever seen has some damage to it, meaning if you look at it, there'll be a scrape or a nick or a scratch because, the paint that is on here I'm sure they were painted, with quality processes and all that. But the paint on this is not as hard or durable as it, say, would be on the machine. And all I can tell you is that these cams are very, very vulnerable to paint damage just from using them. It's not that anyone was harsh on them, but I don't see any scratches on these. What does that tell me? Well, the first thing it tells me is that I don't think this device got used very much. I think someone tried it once and they just probably started with the zigzag. Maybe they never even got to the decorative stitches. They started with the zigzag and they probably said, you know, this isn't working like the person who demonstrated in the Singer showroom showed me. I'm not sure. No. And maybe they didn't want to say anything because someone had given it to them. Maybe it was a gift and it's like, oh, well, thank you. This is awesome. You know, they just put it away in the box. I swear, I think this was taken out maybe once, or it could be that someone just started sewing and never used it. It is entirely possible because I don't really see any paint damage on the actual device itself. There's a few little scratches here, but that could come from just, I don't know, shifting around in the box. So why am I focusing so much on the paint of the beautiful pristine paint on these cams? There are people who collect these, and the more beautiful they are, the more valuable they are. It could be that I may find someone who wants to buy this and they may be willing to pay. I don't know what they'll pay for it. I'll have to go and see what it goes for on eBay. eBay's a little different because you have a large audience. But I am definitely going to take extra good care of these cams, guys, because, you know, maybe I did overpay for the machine. But what do you think? Do you think there's interest in this lovely, basically new old stock? I swear I don't think this thing got any use at all. And it's a wonderful piece of history, a little time capsule back when Singer was, you know, starting to get questions from their customers. Hey, I've heard that those Italian companies are starting to do zigzag. What do you think about that? Well, you know, you can see, you know, if you've ever dealt with someone who's trying to sell you a product, they want to emphasize what they have, right? And they said, well, if you need zigzag, just use this. Use the zigzagger, you know, and it'll be great. So I tried using a zigzagger years ago, and it does move the fabric, but it can be very wonky to sew on. If any of my viewers have used these and used them successfully and you love them, let me know, because I'm just curious as to anyone actually finds them useful or if they're just a wonderful piece of history. Anyway, thank you all again for watching my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. There's no cost. And if you find any of the material on this channel useful, just click on any of my videos because they all have the link to buy me a coffee. You'll also see it on the home page there under the description of the channel. And you can click on there and it'll take you to my Buy Me a Coffee page, which looks just like my YouTube channel because you'll see the Singer photo, the two-tone 301 that I first restored, and you can decide if you'd like to support my efforts to help me purchase more of these machines that need to be rescued, and then we can go through them and talk about them and hopefully learn how to keep them running. Thank you all again, and we'll see you next time.